Stop! She was on her way to a meeting and saw her husband, who said he'd be home working, leaving the gym with an attractive young woman. Her heart raced. Driven by instinct, she decided to follow him, and then froze at what she saw. Before we dive into this calculated downfall, hit that subscribe button, give this video a huge thumbs up, and tell us in the comments, what is the most unbelievable excuse a cheater has ever given you? The lie in the financial district. The dense air of the office seemed to weigh on Eleanor Hayes' shoulders. At 37, she was the personification of competence, a chief operating officer, COO, who orchestrated the complex inner workings of a major event planning firm in Miami with the precision of an orchestra conductor. The glass walls of her office framed the agitation of the city, a stark contrast to the concentrated silence in which she found herself, submerged in a mountain of contracts. Her job demanded a logical mind, an attention to detail that bordered on obsession, traits she applied not only to her career, but to her entire life. The phone rang, a jarring sound that broke her concentration. It was an emergency call, one of those adrenaline-spiking situations. There was a problem at the Perez Art Museum, one of the city's most coveted venues, where a gala was set for the following weekend. Structural concerns, supplier issues, the kind of chaos only her presence could solve. Eleanor sighed, her mind already cataloging potential solutions, as she shut down her computer. Leaving the air-conditioned building and stepping into the humid Miami afternoon heat, her mind was still racing. She was walking briskly down the sidewalk when something across the street made her stop abruptly, as if she had hit an invisible wall. The air seemed to escape her lungs. There, leaving the neighborhood's trendiest gym, with a smile that radiated almost youthful energy, was Marcus Thorne, her husband, her partner, the man who, that very morning, had given her a sleepy kiss on the forehead and sworn he would spend the day locked in his home office, drowning in financial reports and cost spreadsheets for the company they built together. He had yawned dramatically, saying he wouldn't even bother changing out of his pajamas due to the pile of work. Yet there he was, in the pulsating heart of the Brickell financial district, wearing new compression shorts and a sleeveless top she had never seen. His hair still damp with sweat, his skin glistening from the workout. He didn't look like someone who had spent the morning analyzing numbers. He looked revitalized, alive, like a man who had just freed himself from a great burden. The initial shock, a point of irritation over the unnecessary lie, would have been manageable. Eleanor was pragmatic. Maybe he just wanted a break, she could understand that. But the real blow, the image that made her heart plummet into her stomach, wasn't his presence. It was his company. Marcus wasn't alone. By his side, walking with the lightness and grace of someone who had the whole world ahead of them, was a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 20 feet tall. Her face was flushed, likely from exercise, and a high, slightly messy ponytail bounced with every step. She had an easy smile, one that illuminated everything around her, and her eyes sparkled as she said something that made Marcus burst into a high, loose laughter that Eleanor hadn't heard in years. He ran his hand through his damp hair, an almost adolescent gesture, a blatant flirtation he seemed to have forgotten how to perform in her presence. It wasn't just a man conversing with a friend. It was a peacock displaying his feathers, enchanted, captivated, completely absorbed in the universe of two that formed on the sidewalk. A whiff of nausea rose in Eleanor's throat. The meeting, the inspection, the urgent event tasks, everything dissolved into a distant, unimportant fog. There was only that scene, unfolding in slow motion across the street. An uncomfortable truth she had been pushing to the back of her mind for months began to emerge with devastating force. The late arrivals, the new workout clothes, the excessive time spent on his phone, smiling at the screen, and changing the subject when she asked. "It's the fantasy football group, Cammy. Just nonsense," he would say. And Eleanor, the logical, rational woman, chose to believe him, because the alternative was an earthquake in foundations she thought were solid rock. The acai test driven. By a primitive impulse, a visceral need to understand, Eleanor acted without thinking. She hid behind a newsstand, her heart pounding, and decided to follow them. The movie she never wanted to see was just beginning, and she had just bought a ticket to the front row. The unlikely pair crossed the street with the intimacy of those who share secrets, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. They didn't go far. They entered a trendy cafe, a vibrant, colorful spot famous for its acai bowls loaded with exotic, caloric toppings, a place Marcus, with his sudden new focus on fitness, should avoid like the plague. Eleanor observed from the somber safety of a bus stop across the street as they chose a corner table by the window. The view was clear, sharp, and cruel. They didn't sit facing each other as friends or colleagues would. They sat side by side, their shoulders almost touching, a proximity that screamed complicity. The order arrived. A single, gigantic acai bowl, brimming with powdered milk, condensed milk, fruit, and granola, with 2 spoons. The image of her dipping her spoon into the bowl and bringing it to her mouth, followed by him doing the same, laughing when a bit of powdered milk dusted her nose. It was like a punch to Eleanor's stomach. It was a couple's ritual, a ritual that had belonged to her and him in their early dating years, now being desecrated with a stranger. The Marcus at home was an increasingly silent, tired man who collapsed on the sofa after work, eyes glued to the television, replying in monosyllables. A man whose energy seemed to be drained by the responsibilities of adult life. But the Marcus sitting there, sharing a bowl of acai, was light, foolish, almost effervescent. His eyes sparkled with an emotion she hadn't seen in a decade. The pain that hit her wasn't just that of betrayal, but that of grief. Grief for realizing that this vibrant man still existed, but he simply no longer belonged to her. He saved it for the other woman. The red button. With trembling hands, Eleanor reached for her phone. Logic, her faithful companion, screamed at her to leave, not to torture herself further. But her heart, that treacherous and masochistic organ, needed one final confirmation. A nail to seal the coffin of her peace of mind. Her fingers flew across the screen, typing a message that was both a test and a trap. "Darling, how are the reports coming along? I need them today to close out the event balance." She hit send and raised her eyes, fixing them on the table across the street. She saw his phone vibrate on the wood. She saw Marcus grab the device, the smile vanish from his face, replaced by a grimace of pure irritation. He didn't reply. He just flipped the phone over, screen down, a gesture of dismissal, of denial, a gesture that said, "You are not important right now." Eleanor took a deep breath, the air scratching her throat. She needed more. She dialed his number, the name My Love, with a heart beside it glowing on her screen. Across the street, his phone lit up again. In front of Sophia, without a hint of hesitation, he hit the red button. He canceled the call, and then, like a coup de grace, she saw him hold the power button and turn the device completely off. Eleanor's world went silent. He wasn't just hiding something. He was actively choosing the other life over hers. In that instant, the ground beneath her feet, which she had always judged to be cement, revealed itself to be quicksand. And she was sinking. What do you think was the most damning piece of evidence for Eleanor? The shared acai ritual or the rejected phone call? How would you have reacted? Comment below. The art of the counterattack. The mask of the martyr knight fell over Miami. But for Eleanor, darkness had arrived much earlier that afternoon on a brickle sidewalk. The drive home was a blur. When she turned the key in the lock of the spacious, elegantly decorated apartment they called home, a heavy silence greeted her. A silence that once meant peace, but now sounded hollow, an accomplice to a farce. Every object, every piece of furniture, every photograph seemed to mock her. She needed to compose herself. The events manager, the crisis solver, took control. She took a long, cold shower, trying to wash away not only the day's sweat, but the sticky feeling of deceit that covered her. She put on comfortable clothes, brewed a chamomile tea that went down bitter, and sat on the sofa, rehearsing normalcy. She wouldn't confront him. Not yet. The explosion of rage and pain would be exactly what he expected, perhaps even desired. It would cast him as the victim of a jealous, out-of-control wife. No, she wouldn't give him that weapon. She would be the lead actress in her own play, and the script would be written by her. When she heard the sound of the key in the lock hours later, her entire body stiffened, but her face remained a mask of tired serenity. Marcus walked in, and his performance was Oscar-worthy. He wore the same old band t-shirt he always wore at home and worn-out tracksuit bottoms. His hair, once damp with sweat, was dry and slightly disheveled, like someone who had spent the whole day in front of a computer. He carried an air of studied exhaustion, the martyr of the home office. "Hello, darling," he said, his voice slow with fabricated tiredness. He leaned in to kiss her, but Eleanor, in a subtle, calculated move, turned her face, making his lips meet her cheek, a cold, brief contact. "That exhausting?" she asked, her tone neutral, almost disinterested. He sighed a long, dramatic sigh, tossing his briefcase onto the sofa. "You have no idea, Cammy. These reports, endless. Staring at spreadsheets all day fries anyone's brain. I think my eyes are going square." He walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a beer. All with the naturalness of a man following the same routine for years. The naturalness was the most outrageous part. Lying was no effort for him. It was his second skin. "I tried calling you earlier," she said, her voice sounding casual, like an unimportant comment. "I needed a data point for the museum meeting." He took a long drink of beer before answering, buying time. "Ah, yes, I saw your call. Sorry, darling. My phone battery died right then. I was so immersed in work I didn't even see the time pass and forgot to plug it in. I only saw it when I went to turn it on just now." The excuse was so flimsy, so insultingly simple, that Eleanor felt an almost uncontrollable urge to laugh. The battery. The oldest, most pathetic lie, but she only nodded. The odor of deceit. He hugged her from behind, a gesture that used to comfort her, but now felt like the embrace of a snake. She smelled him. It wasn't the familiar scent of his soap, but a different, sweeter perfume, mixed with the smell of sweat. Acai. That sweet, cloying smell was embedded in his skin. The olfactory evidence, the confirmation she hadn't asked for, but that hit her with the force of a slap. She gently slipped out of his embrace. "Let's order a pizza. I didn't have time to cook. My day was hectic too." In the days that followed, Eleanor observed, she became a silent spectator of her own life. And what she saw was the construction of a new persona. Marcus, who used to complain about the monotony of the gym, now went every day with contagious enthusiasm. He bought new workout clothes, colorful trainers, a trendy watch that measured his heart rate. He spent more time in front of the mirror, fixing his hair, experimenting with new products. He was rejuvenating, reinventing himself. But not for her. "I decided I need to take better care of myself," he replied, when Eleanor asked about his new dedication with false admiration. "No more sedentary lifestyle. It's good for the head. It relieves work stress. The irony was so thick, it could be cut with a knife. The stress he needed to relieve had a name, an age, and an easy smile. She pretended to believe, encouraged, praised. Every word of support was a piece of her soul that she felt breaking. But she knew she needed to maintain the facade. The spyware, the decision was made in a sleepless dawn, while Marcus slept beside her, snoring peacefully. She got up and went to the living room, phone in hand. The first message was to Laura, her best friend, a sharp, pragmatic family lawyer who had seen the worst sides of love. "Laura, I need your help. I think Marcus is cheating." Laura's answer came minutes later, short and direct. "Do you think, or are you sure?" Eleanor recounted everything. Laura offered a solution. "There are ways to be absolutely sure, Cammy, but you need to be prepared for what you find. The truth sometimes is uglier than we imagine." The next day, following her friend's precise instructions, she waited for Marcus to leave for his morning run. With her heart in her mouth, she grabbed his phone, which he had left charging on the nightstand. Unlocking it was easy. The password was the date of their first kiss. Another stab of irony. In less than 2 minutes, a silent, invisible spyware application was installed. The wait was torture. For 2 days, nothing. His conversations were banal. Work groups, the fantasy football group. Eleanor began to question herself. Had she imagined everything? But on the third night, the notification arrived. A new conversation, from an unsaved number, popped up on Eleanor's laptop screen, mirroring his phone. The contact name was just Sophia, and what she read next made the world stop turning. Marcus's words, in a passionate, sickeningly sweet tone she didn't recognize, painted a parallel reality, a grotesque fiction, where she was the secondary villain. "Sophia, my star, I can't wait to see you again. I'm counting the seconds." Sophia's quick reply, "Me too, my darling. But what about the situation there? Any news?" Then, the masterpiece of Marcus's manipulation was revealed in all its sordid glory. "Same as always, my girl. You know I don't really live with Eleanor anymore. Our marriage ended a long time ago. We only share the same roof for pure bureaucratic convenience. I only support her because she has some very complicated health issues. You know how it is? I can't just abandon her all at once. My conscience won't let me." Eleanor reread the message 1, 2, 3 times. Health issues? She was the healthiest person she knew. Separated? They had slept in the same bed the night before. The farce was so elaborate, so cruel. He wasn't just cheating. He was rewriting their history, turning her into a sick, dependent ex-wife to justify his villainy. Besides, we have this companies together, and dissolving that partnership is hell. That ties me to her in a way you can't imagine. But none of that matters. You are my present and my future. You are the light that appeared to pull me out of this darkness." Eleanor felt her eyes burn. But the tears were not of sadness. They were of fury. A pure, incandescent fury that burned away the pain and transformed it into glacial determination. He had built a castle of lies, and she, with her own hands, was going to demolish it, brick by brick, until nothing remained but the raw, naked truth. What kind of monster uses their wife's imaginary illness as an excuse to cheat? How do you think Eleanor should expose him to the public and to Sophia without looking like the jealous, hysterical wife? Share your strategic plan in the comments. The unlikely alliance, the fury that ignited Eleanor's veins that morning, did not fade with the sunrise. It settled, transforming into a sharp mass of ice in her chest. The humiliation of being portrayed as a fragile invalid, a piece of charity in her own husband's life, overcame any other feeling. He didn't just cheat. He stripped her of her strength, her identity, to seduce another person. Eleanor knew a burst of rage would be dismissed as hysteria. Presenting printed messages would be effective, but it would leave the other party, the young woman, in the role of the innocent victim who knew nothing. And Eleanor could not allow that. The truth needed to be a triple-effect bomb, hitting Marcus, clarifying things for Sophia, and above all, freeing herself. The decision to seek out Sophia was not easy. It required swallowing her pride, placing herself in a position of vulnerability. But the need to dismantle Marcus's farce was greater. Through the conversations, Eleanor discovered where Sophia worked, a small advertising agency in the financial district. It wasn't hard to find her social media profile, open, full of smiling photos and selfies at the gym. She seemed like a normal girl. One afternoon, under the pretext of an external meeting, Eleanor drove to the agency. When Sophia walked out of the building, laughing into her phone, Eleanor felt her heart pound. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor got out of the car and walked toward her. "Sophia Lopez." Eleanor's voice was firmer than she expected. The young woman turned, surprised, the smile disappearing at the sight of a serious woman she didn't recognize. "Yes. Do we know each other?" "My name is Eleanor Hayes. I know this will sound strange, but I really need to talk to you. It's about Marcus." His name floated in the air between them. Sophia's expression instantly changed. Surprise gave way to defensive suspicion. "Marcus? What about him? Who are you?" "I am his wife," Eleanor said, the words coming out dry. Ayana. She saw the shock in Sophia's eyes, followed by a spark of disdain. "His ex-wife, you mean? Look, I don't know what you want, but Marcus has already explained everything about your situation. I'm sorry about your problems, truly, but our story is something else." "Problems? What problems?" Eleanor asked. Her voice sharp. Sophia hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want to be rude, but your health issues? He told me your marriage ended a long time ago, that you don't even live together, but that he supports you because of that, and the company." It was there, on the busy sidewalk, under the strong afternoon sun, that Marcus's house of cards began to crumble. Eleanor let out a laugh, a bitter, joyless sound. "Health issues? Living separately? Sophia, I slept in the same bed as him last night. I made him breakfast this morning. I am the COO of the company he presides over. I have the health of an ox. The only sickness in this story is his pathological lying." The conviction in Eleanor's voice, the absence of drama, the clarity of the facts, shook Sophia's certainty. The young woman looked at Eleanor, seeing an elegant, strong woman who bore no resemblance to the fragile, sick figure Marcus had painted. Doubt began to bloom in her eyes. This can't be. He wouldn't lie to me like that." "He wouldn't lie?" Eleanor countered, her voice loaded with painful irony. "He lies to me every day. He lies about where he goes, who he's with, what he does. Why would you be an exception? He told you I'm a poor thing, so you would feel like his savior." Eleanor opened her purse, her hand steady, and pulled out her phone. She didn't need to show the text messages. She only opened the photo gallery. The first was a selfie of her and Marcus, taken the previous weekend at a family lunch, both smiling, his arm around her. The second was a photo of the inside of their apartment, the marriage bed made, the decor, which bore both their marks. "This is our home, where he slept yesterday. And this," she said, showing the wedding photo, "was the promise he broke. With me and apparently with you too." Sophia looked at the photos, her face paling with each image. The truth hit her in waves, drowning the romantic fantasy she lived in. The pieces fit. The calls he never answered when he was with her. The weekends he could never spend entirely. The vague excuses. It all made sense now. She wasn't the heroine. She was the other woman. The fool. God, I can't believe it. I can't believe I was so stupid. He swore he was separating, that it was only a matter of time. He made me believe I was his future. At that moment, something shifted between the two women. Rivalry and distrust gave way to a dark, mutual understanding. Both were victims of the same man, the same manipulative selfishness. You weren't stupid, Sophia. You were lied to. He's a professional. He lies like he breathes. The blame is not yours. It's his. Sophia looked up, her face smudged with mascara. And now what do we do? The question wasn't a plea for advice. It was a call to action. Shared pain had forged an unlikely alliance. Now, Eleanor said, her voice gaining new strength, we show him what happens when two women he underestimated decide to write the end of the story. He likes theater, doesn't he? Well, let's give him a show he'll never forget. The curtain call. The plan was not conceived in a burst of rage, but built with the precision of an engineering project. It was a play, as Eleanor had foreseen, but now with two leading actresses and an impeccable script. The setting for the final act was chosen carefully. A newly opened, fashionable Italian restaurant in the financial district, where Marcus was taking Sophia to impress her. It was perfect, public, sophisticated, and above all, neutral territory. Sophia, following instructions, set the date. Thursday at 8 to celebrate our first month together, she suggested sweetly. Marcus agreed immediately, exultant. The trap was set. That same night, he announced to Eleanor with a feigned air of regret. Darling, bad news. Remember that group of investors from the South? Well, they're in town and scheduled a last-minute dinner on Thursday. Business stuff. Annoying, but unavoidable. I'll have to go. Eleanor, who already knew about the business dinner for days, just sighed. Too bad, dear. But it's okay. Work is work. I'll catch up on some series. The relief on his face was so palpable that she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. On Thursday, Marcus got ready. A long shower, his best perfume, and the linen shirt Eleanor had given him for his birthday. Don't wait up for me, darling. This is going to run late, he said, giving Eleanor a quick kiss on the forehead. All right. Have a good business dinner, she replied. Her voice firm. Eleanor didn't dress to compete. She dressed for victory. She chose a classic black dress, elegant and sober. Discreet makeup, but with a dark red lipstick, a silent declaration of war. She pulled her hair back into a severe low bun. She was the judge, about to read the sentence. Eleanor arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early. She sat at a strategic table, ordered a glass of red wine, and waited. Punctually at 8, Sophia walked in, looking stunning, but with a nervous smile. He's coming. Just texted me saying he's parked the car, Sophia whispered, sitting down. Perfect, Eleanor replied, sipping her wine. Remember, Sophia, no screaming, no crying. Our strength is in our calm. We are in control. Then he entered. Marcus crossed the restaurant door like a movie star. Perfect hair, impeccable shirt, a confident smile on his lips. In his hands, a small bouquet of red roses. His eyes scanned the room, looking for Sophia. When he saw her, his smile widened. He started walking toward the table, the springy step of a man who feels like the king of the world, completely oblivious to the second figure sitting in the shadows. He was just feet from the table, the bouquet extended, the name Sophia almost forming on his lips, when his gaze finally adjusted. He saw Eleanor. The smile froze. Color drained from his face, leaving behind a pale mask of shock and disbelief. The bouquet of roses slipped from his paralyzed hand and fell to the floor with a dull thud, the petals scattering across the carpet like drops of blood. Time seemed to stop. Only that triangle existed, frozen in an instant of pure, devastating revelation. Eleanor. Sophia. What? What is this? I can explain. The phrase, the universal cliché of the guilty, came out weak, a pathetic thread of a voice. But the script for that night no longer belonged to him. Sophia was the first to break the spell. Her voice, once sweet, was now sharp as a piece of glass. No, Marcus, you won't be able to explain anything. She leaned forward, eyes fixed on his, without a single tear. Are you going to explain what? That your wife doesn't have a terminal illness? That you're not separated? That you lied to me every day since we met? That you used my feelings to feel young and powerful again? No, Marcus, there is nothing to explain. The other restaurant patrons began to notice the scene. The private drama had become a public spectacle. Marcus, desperate, turned toward Eleanor, his eyes imploring for some kind of mercy. But what he found was worse. He found calm. Eleanor looked at him not with the hatred of a betrayed wife, but with the distance of a judge delivering a sentence. You turned our life, Marcus, our marriage, our company, into a cheap theater to feed your ego, she said, her voice clear and cutting, every syllable weighing a ton. You turned me into a sick, fragile character in your little story. Well, here is your final stage. The lights are all on you, and the show is over. She made a subtle gesture with her hand, encompassing the restaurant, the shocked silence, the two women in front of him. It's over. The finality in those two words was absolute. In a synchronized movement, they both stood up. Eleanor adjusted her black dress, a figure of power and self-control. Sophia, beside her, seemed to have aged 10 years that night, but in her posture was a new, unbreakable strength. They simply turned their backs on him and began to walk toward the exit. Marcus was left behind, a statue of humiliation, in the middle of the hall. The fallen flowers at his feet, the expensive perfume still lingering in the air, the smile frozen in a grimace of panic. He was alone, abandoned by the two women he deceived, exposed in his mediocrity. That night, Eleanor did not leave defeated. She left free. And walking beside her was another woman, who, that same night, also found her own liberation. What do you think will be the immediate reaction of the London elite media when this story inevitably leaks? And how will Eleanor use her COO position to leverage the divorce and dismantle Marcus's control over their company? Share your predictions for the next chapter. Click here to watch a video about the most shocking corporate downfalls caused by personal scandals. And don't forget to subscribe. Stop. The curtain has fallen on Marcus's theatrical farce, but the real drama, the corporate and social fallout, is just beginning. Before we dive into the total collapse of his world, hit that subscribe button, give us a huge like, and tell us in the comments. If you were Eleanor, what is the first company asset you would freeze to hurt Marcus the most? The silence of the apartment. The silence that greeted Marcus Thorne when he finally stumbled into his Miami apartment was heavier than any shout. The humiliation at the Italian restaurant had been a public execution, but the quiet of his home was the coffin. He had lost his composure, his power, and his two women in one catastrophic evening. He tried to call Eleanor dozens of times. The calls went straight to voicemail. He sent long, desperate messages filled with broken promises and pleas for forgiveness. Cammy, I was wrong. I was an idiot, a jerk. I love you. Please, let's talk. I'll do anything. The messages were read, but went unanswered. Her silence was more eloquent and more painful than any scream. In the following days, he spiraled. The company, once a symbol of his success, became a constant reminder of his lost partnership. He saw Eleanor's office empty. She had not returned to work, and felt an existential panic. The truth was, without her logical mind and organizational skills, he was only half of a functional whole. He had underestimated her not just as a woman, but as the keystone of his entire life. The corporate coup. Eleanor, meanwhile, was not resting. She was working. She met with her lawyer, Laura, the morning after the restaurant confrontation. The meeting was swift, professional, and devastatingly efficient. Marcus is painting you as the irrational, emotional wife who orchestrated a public scene due to health issues, just as he told Sophia, Laura stated, reviewing the emergency divorce filing. Eleanor gave a cold, dry laugh. Let him. We have the evidence of his own words, Laura. But we need more than just moral superiority. We need a clean, financially surgical separation. Eleanor, the company's COO and a partner who had built the business with Marcus from the ground up, knew exactly where the company's vulnerabilities lay. The strategy, the operational freeze. Eleanor used her power as COO and signatory on key accounts to initiate a temporary operational review, citing unforeseen management conflict. This immediately froze the majority of non-essential spending and, crucially, all corporate credit cards, including the one Marcus used for his extravagant gifts and travel, the client list. Her second move was to personally contact the company's 3 largest clients she had secured and maintained for years. She didn't reveal the details of the divorce, only that she was stepping away and forming her own venture. Within 48 hours, those 3 clients, who valued Eleanor's precision and reputation over Marcus's showmanship, pulled their major accounts, citing concerns over leadership stability and lack of confidence in the remaining management structure. The boardroom shuffle. She then leveraged her long-standing relationship with the company's 2 silent investors, presenting them with Marcus's reckless financial statements and the looming threat of the public scandal hitting the media. She offered a choice. Either they buy her out at her calculated, non-negotiable price, or she would partner with a competing firm, taking her half of the clients and their investment with her. The board meeting was a slaughter. Marcus, panicked and outmaneuvered, watched as his wife, the woman he had called fragile and dependent, used his own financial recklessness and public moral failure as a weapon to dismantle the empire they had built. The final showdown 2 weeks after the restaurant confrontation, the divorce was finalized with terrifying speed. Eleanor took a substantial financial settlement, the beautiful Miami apartment, and, most importantly, her name was completely cleared in the business community. Marcus was left with a crippled company, mounting debt, and a severely tarnished reputation. Eleanor agreed to one final meeting, not to reconcile, but to finalize the paperwork transfer at the company's empty headquarters. Marcus entered the boardroom, the same room where he had once celebrated his greatest deals, a broken man. He was unshaven, looked 10 years older, and his expensive suit seemed to sag on his shoulders. "Cammy," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "Please don't do this. I've lost everything. I was wrong. I was a fool. I know you don't love me, but the company, we built it together. Don't take it all away." Eleanor looked at him, not with hatred, but with a clinical indifference that cut him deeper than rage. "I didn't take anything away, Marcus," she said, signing the last document with a flourish. "You gave it all away the minute you chose to rewrite my life story. You thought power was about money and control. I taught you that power is about narrative and integrity." She closed her briefcase. "The truth is, without my logic and my competence, you were never more than a charming facade. I wasn't your fragile wife. I was your anchor and your operating system, and you voluntarily ejected me." She stood up, tall and poised in her victory. "As for Sophia," Eleanor continued, seeing Marcus flinch, "she left you the morning after the dinner. She realized she wasn't a hero saving a good man. She was a distraction for a desperate, petty one. She sent a message to both of us. The next time you try to seduce someone, try using the truth. It's much harder to maintain, but it won't destroy you. Eleanor walked toward the door. Marcus rushed to block her, a desperate final plea in his eyes. Eleanor, wait! What about us? What about our life? Please, let's just go back to the beginning. I can change. She stopped, turned, and looked at him one last time. The beginning, Marcus. I already went back to the beginning. I went back to the moment before I met you, and I chose a different path. She walked out of the boardroom, leaving him standing alone in the ruins of the empire, built on her competence and destroyed by his lies. Final reflection and call to action. Eleanor's journey teaches us that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is not fighting to keep someone who diminishes us, but having the courage to detonate the world we know, to build a new one on our own terms. She didn't seek revenge through petty drama. She sought justice through strategy, logic, and undeniable financial power. She chose to reclaim her identity and her story. What lesson do you think Marcus will never be able to unlearn about women and bar? And what do you think is the next bold step Eleanor should take in her newly won single life? If you loved Eleanor's cold, calculated victory, please like this video, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories.
There are wounds that don't bleed, words that can destroy a life. But there are also moments, just one moment, that can change everything. Isabel Cruz was once a humble middle school art teacher living in a low-income neighborhood. She loved with her whole heart, believed with blind faith, and held on to the hope that one day love and patience would be rewarded. But life doesn't always unfold the way we imagine. Sometimes people throw away the most beautiful things because they're too shallow to see their worth. Isabel was abandoned by her husband while carrying twin sons. No warm goodbye, no final embrace, just a cold sentence, "You are nothing." He, Nathan Hale, a tech entrepreneur, once at the height of success, invited his ex-wife to his new wedding, not out of love, but to humiliate her. But he had no idea that the woman he once called worthless had turned her pain into power. And that woman, she wouldn't just walk into the wedding. She would arrive like a storm of grace with 2 sons by her side, sons he never dared to claim. This isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of rebirth, of a woman thrown away who rose again, not to make him suffer, but to prove that no one, no man gets to define her worth. But her. The wall clock ticked towards 6 p.m. in the small kitchen, bathed in golden candlelight. Isabel Cruz carefully set the dinner table, as if it were the most important evening of her life. The scent of buttered toast lingered in the air, and the flickering candles danced in her hopeful eyes. Tonight, she would tell Nathan the most miraculous news of her life. She was pregnant. Not just 1 child, but 2. A pair of twins. She adjusted her hair, slipped on the simple red dress he once complimented. Her hand rested gently on her belly. All her worries melted away with the thought of sharing this joy with the man she loved. The door creaked open. Nathan walked in. No smile, no greeting. He tossed his keys on the counter, his eyes distant and cold. "You're home," Isabel whispered, voice trembling with anticipation. "I have a surprise for you." He said nothing, poured himself a glass of wine and sat down. "We need to talk." She sat across from him, uneasy. "What is it?" Nathan looked her dead in the eye without hesitation. "Isabel, this marriage was a mistake. You don't belong in my world. You have nothing, no background, no potential, no value. I'm tired of pretending otherwise every single day." Her heart clenched. "Nathan, I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby." He let out a mocking laugh. "Don't think I'm going to fall for that cheap stunt. That child isn't mine, and even if it were, I don't care." The room turned ice cold. The scent of toast vanished. So did the light in her eyes. "I want you out, tonight," he said, rising. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Isabel froze. Years of dreams, built hopes, collapsed in a few brutal sentences. She didn't cry. The pain was too heavy for tears. She just watched him walk away, step into the bedroom, and close the door, like she had never existed. That night, she packed a small bag and walked out of the house she once called home, carrying a shattered heart and 2 unborn lives. Spring rain fell over the city like sorrow pouring from the sky. Isabel stood still before the iron gate of what used to be her home. No suitcase, no umbrella, just shivering hands and a pounding heart. Inside her, 2 tiny lives were just beginning, and she had no idea where to go. She had left when Nathan told her to, but after nearly an hour of aimless walking, with the rain growing heavier and the city swallowing her whole, she turned back. There was still one small spark of hope left inside her. Maybe, just maybe, if he saw her like this, drenched, alone, still carrying his child, he would soften. She pressed the doorbell, once, then again. The porch light flickered on, the door opened. Nathan appeared, tired-eyed, a glass of wine in hand, still wearing the same white shirt from earlier. "Isabel?" he said, without much surprise. She stepped forward, voice trembling. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't know what to do." "I was clear," he sighed. "We're done. Why are you here?" "I'm pregnant, Nathan," she whispered, tears mixing with rain on her chin. "It's your child." He frowned, as if weighing guilt against inconvenience. But then, cold and certain, he said, "I don't believe you. And even if it's true, I don't want to be involved. I gave you a chance to leave with dignity." "Just one night," she pleaded. "You don't have to do anything, just let me stay." He shook his head, sipping his wine. "Isabel, don't make this worse. You've always been this weak. That's why I couldn't stay." She stood frozen. All warmth vanished. Every memory of love turned to dust. The door closed. Not with a slam, just a soft click, crueler than a scream. Isabel turned away, the rain beating down like punishment. She wandered the sidewalks, wind slicing her skin, clothes clinging to her bones. The city blazed with lights, but no one saw her. No one asked if she was okay. By midnight, she found a shabby motel off a side street, a faded sign flickering in the dark. The owner, a middle-aged woman, eyed her and asked, "You got money?" Isabel pulled out a few crumpled bills, the week's pay from substitute teaching at a community art center. The woman nodded. "Small room, 2nd floor. No heat." "As long as it has a roof," Isabel whispered. She entered the room, damp, smelling of bleach. But to her, it was heaven. She sat at the edge of the bed, curled into herself, one hand on her still flat belly. Her eyes staring into the dark. "My baby," she whispered. "I have nothing left. Except you." 4 months after the night she was cast out, Isabel Cruz lived in a cramped attic room of a decaying apartment building. No heater, no air conditioning, just a broken-legged bed, a squeaky fan, and restless sleep interrupted by pregnancy cramps. She was in her 7th month. Her belly had grown heavy. Every step was a struggle, but she wouldn't let herself fall. By day, she taught part-time art lessons at a youth center. By evening, she served tables at a small diner. At night, she cleaned an office building when the city was fast asleep. She had no close friends in this city. The only family she had was her sister living states away, but Isabel refused to ask for help. She had been discarded once, and now she wanted to rise again on her own. One cold, rainy night, while mopping the 10th floor of a finance company, Isabel felt a sharp, sudden pain in her lower back. She assumed it was exhaustion. Then, her water broke. A panicked security guard called 911. She was rushed to the hospital in preterm labor at just 34 weeks. Under the sterile white lights and humming machines, she could only say one thing when the doctor asked if she had any family. "I only have my babies. Please, save my babies." 2 hours later, Luca and Elias entered the world, tiny, fragile, but alive. They were placed into incubators. Isabel collapsed from exhaustion, drifting in and out of consciousness as tears soaked her pillow. Not from pain, but from knowing her children had survived and that they had entered this world alongside her fight. She awoke the next morning, blurry-eyed and weak. A nurse leaned over gently and said, "They're both stable, but it'll be a long stay in NICU." Isabel clenched her fist. She looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "I won't give up. Not for anyone else, but for 2 little pairs of eyes waiting behind a NICU glass. For 2 heartbeats, her last remaining hope in this world." Every morning, Isabel Cruz pushed open the glass doors to the neonatal intensive care unit, walking toward the 2 incubators as if it were the holiest ritual of her day. Luca and Elias, her tiny angels, grew stronger with each delicate breath. She sang lullabies while they still needed ventilators. She read stories before their eyes could open. And when one of them wrapped a tiny hand around her finger for the first time, Isabel knew she was no longer the woman who had been left behind. She was a mother, and that was enough to begin again. 3 weeks later, when the twins were discharged, Isabel held them in her fragile arms and returned to the attic room where nothing waited but 3 hearts beating in harmony. Unable to maintain 3 jobs, Isabel gave up her night janitorial shift. Instead, during the baby's naps, she pulled out her sketch pad. She drew their tiny faces. She captured dreams not yet spoken. One day, while picking up medicine at the local community clinic, she overheard a woman wishing for a portrait of her family to hang in the living room. Isabel stepped forward, hesitant but hopeful. "I could try drawing it if you'd like." That portrait, a family with 3 kids and an old dog, moved the woman to tears. "You should sell your work," she said. "There are so many people who need something this warm." From that moment, Isabel began taking orders through social media. At first it was friends, then friends of friends, then strangers. She named her page Cruz Creations. Within 8 months, she'd saved enough to move out of the attic and into a sunlit, cozy apartment with a little balcony. Luca and Elias grew up surrounded by love and watercolor skies. Every night, they sat beside her, helping place stamps on mailing boxes, giggling when she called them the best little assistants in the world. And it was in those moments, amid the scent of paper and children's laughter, that Isabel realized she didn't need to look back. She was painting a new future, one stroke, one color at a time, with the same hands that once trembled, now steadier than ever. One late autumn afternoon 4 years ago, while Isabel was wrapping art prints for shipping, Luca burst into the house holding a thick, gold-trimmed envelope. "Mom, you got a letter. It looks really fancy." She wiped her hands and took the envelope, curious. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Her heart skipped a beat. "Nathan Hale." She opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation, embossed, elegant, accompanied by a handwritten note. "Thought you'd like to see how some of us recover from our mistakes." No greeting, no explanation, just arrogance wrapped in silk. Nathan was getting married to a woman from high society, his perfect ending, and he wanted Isabel, the woman he once called worthless, to witness it. She sat in silence for a few minutes. No anger, no sadness, just a slow, meaningful smile. He still thought she was the same woman he abandoned. He had no idea that the person he left behind didn't just survive. She had grown, flourished, and succeeded in ways he could never imagine. She stepped into her son's room. "Boys, want to go to a wedding?" The twins looked up, puzzled. "Whose wedding?" "Nathan's," she said calmly. Elias squinted. "That name sounds familiar." "He's your father," Isabel replied without hesitation. Silence. Then Luca asked, "Why are we going?" She knelt, placing a hand gently on their shoulders. Not to be angry, not for revenge, just to remind someone what they chose to walk away from. That night, she sat before her mirror, bathed in warm yellow light. She was no longer the girl who once cried herself empty in a kitchen years ago. She was a woman who knew exactly who she was. This time, she wouldn't arrive with her head down. She would walk in as living proof of everything he could never have again. The wedding took place in one of the city's most luxurious hotels, where crystal chandeliers dripped like waterfalls of light and classical music floated from a live orchestra in the corner. Guests arrived in floor-length gowns and tailored tuxedos. Champagne sparkled in delicate flutes, and the name of the groom, Nathan Hale, was spoken with pride, as if he were the center of the universe. And then the main doors opened. Everything paused. Isabel Cruz stepped inside, not rushing, not hesitating. She wore a stunning emerald green gown, the fabric flowing with her every move. Her hair swept into a graceful updo, a few golden strands framing her face. On either side of her, she held the hands of two young boys in perfectly fitted tuxedos, Luca and Elias. Miniature reflections of the man now frozen in the center of the ceremony. No one in the room knew who she was, but no one could look away. Guests murmured, "Who is she, an actress, a designer?" Isabel didn't answer. She just smiled, softly but powerfully. She walked down the aisle, every step like its own musical phrase. Luca and Elias kept perfect pace, poised and upright. Two boys who needed no validation, no approval. She stopped near the front row. That was when Nathan's eyes, those proud, calculated eyes, locked onto hers. His heart skipped a beat. Not from love, from fear. She stood there, the embodiment of everything he had once rejected. His fiancée, Stephanie, frowned. "Do you know her?" Isabel turned gracefully and nodded. "Hello, Stephanie. I'm Isabel, the mother of these two boys." Her gaze shifted to Nathan. "And the woman he walked away from while I carried them inside me." Silence fell over the room. No one laughed. No one breathed. Then Isabel continued calmly. "He once said I was nothing. So today, I didn't come to interrupt. I came to remind him what he gave up." And with that she turned and walked away, leaving behind 100 stunned faces and a groom who could no longer remember how to speak. The ballroom remained frozen in silence after Isabel's powerful words, but she hadn't yet reached the exit when Stephanie's voice sliced through the air. "Stop." Isabel paused, turned around, calm, unwavering. "He's their father?" Stephanie stared at Nathan, suspicion sharp in her eyes. "Is that true?" Nathan looked around. Sweat gleamed on his forehead. 100 eyes were locked on him. She's making it up," he stammered. "She's just trying to stir up drama." "He had a family once," Isabel said evenly. "He chose to walk away." Stephanie stood frozen. She knelt to look at Luca and Elias, eye to eye, and no DNA test was needed. The resemblance was undeniable. "They look just like you," she whispered. She turned slightly. "Luca, Elias, do you have something to say?" The boys didn't hesitate. Luca took half a step forward, chin raised, voice firm beyond his years. "We don't need you." Elias followed, steady and sure. "We have our mom, and she's strong enough for all three of us." Silence blanketed the room. Then, slowly, a single clap. Then another and another, until the room filled with a rising tide of applause. Not for drama, but for truth, spoken through the innocence and strength of two boys. Stephanie took a step back. She stared at Nathan as if seeing him for the first time. "You could lie to me, but you can't lie to the truth. I will not marry a man who abandoned his children and built his future on a lie." She pulled off her ring, held it tightly for a second, then placed it gently on the table. For all to see, the wedding was over. While Nathan stood frozen in place, a wave of murmurs swept through the guests. One voice rose. "Isn't that Isabel Cruz, the woman who runs Cruz Creations? I hired her for my firm's art showcase last spring." Another added, "She's the single mom Forbes featured last year, won Entrepreneur of the Year." The air shifted. Admiring glances turned toward Isabel, and Nathan now stood in the eye of the storm. Nathan stood frozen, gripping the ring. But it was too late. Investors began to leave. A state senator who'd supported him walked out in silence. The world Nathan built with pride was unraveling by the second. Luca reached up and held his mother's hand. "Mom, can we go now?" Isabel bent down and kissed his forehead. "Of course. I think we've said enough." And so they walked away, unhurried, unshaken. Behind them, the empire Nathan once ruled began to crack, piece. 3 months after the wedding disaster, Nathan Hale lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment, its walls peeling and the ceiling leaking rain. The neighborhood was quiet and worn down, a far cry from the mansions, champagne galas, and exclusive circles he once called home. There were no voices calling his name. No applause, no flashing lights, no empty praise. Only a creaky wooden chair, a cold cup of coffee, and a man staring at his reflection, unable to recognize the person staring back. He had lost everything. His company was pulled from projects, investors backed out, bank accounts frozen to pay off legal debts. The board ended his contract with a single, curt email. But the greatest pain wasn't in the material things he'd lost. It was watching Isabel on television, standing center stage at a national arts conference, strong and radiant, a symbol of rebirth. She spoke about how art could heal and empower children. Her voice was calm, firm, free of resentment. Behind her, Luca and Elias smiled as they handed over a charity painting to an international children's foundation. Nathan sat motionless, his heart tearing. It was the first time in years he saw his sons, older, smarter, self-assured. They looked like him, but they didn't belong to him anymore. He couldn't bear it. One rainy afternoon, he went to their school and stood quietly at the edge of the playground, waiting for the final bell to ring. Luca came out first. When he saw Nathan, he froze. "Luca," Nathan called, voice raw. "It's Dad." The boy stood still for a moment, then turned away without a word. Elias followed. Nathan stepped forward. "Can I have a minute with you?" The boy looked him in the eye. "You're the one who left our mom while we were still inside her, aren't you?" Nathan swallowed. I was wrong, deeply wrong." Elias nodded, not in anger, but in quiet sadness. "We're okay," he said. "Mom taught us to forgive, but forgiving doesn't mean letting you back in." Then they walked away, leaving Nathan alone in the rain. That night, he opened an old box tucked away in the closet, filled with the earliest sketches he'd made with Isabel back when they dreamed of a future together. Her note still marked the margins. "We'll build this together, now," daggers in his memory. He couldn't go back. He couldn't unsay the things he'd said, undo the things he'd done. He once had a family. He had called that woman nothing, only to realize now that he was the one the world would forget. The punishment hadn't come from a courtroom. It came in the form of 2 sons turning away, and the realization that the woman he threw away had become everything he could never touch again. Nathan didn't give up. After being turned away in the rain, he kept returning, week after week, standing quietly outside the school gates, keeping his distance just to see his sons from afar. He didn't push, didn't call out. He simply waited. One time, he left a box of cookies outside their classroom with a note. I'm not asking for anything. Just hope you enjoy these." Luca was the first to soften. One rainy afternoon, seeing Nathan drenched, he ran out and handed him an old umbrella. "You don't have to be wet, Dad," he said quietly, before hurrying off. Elias took longer, but eventually he looked back, not with anger, but with a gaze that said, "We don't hate you anymore, but we're not ready to call you family." Nathan reached out to Isabel too, not to ask for a second chance, just to say, "Sorry," a real apology with no expectations. They met at the cafe they used to visit years ago. She arrived 10 minutes late, not because she doubted, but because she needed time to brace herself. "I don't expect forgiveness," Nathan said, voice low, "but I want you to know I'm no longer the man who said those things." Isabel didn't respond. She just stared out the window, hands gripping her coffee as if letting go would break her. Inside her, a silent storm raged. She still loved him, a love that didn't vanish overnight, that couldn't be erased even after being trampled. But every time she looked into his eyes, she saw herself, back then, standing in the kitchen, holding her belly while her heart shattered. "I survived," she whispered, her voice tight, but the scars never left. Nathan nodded. He didn't beg, just listened, and she realized that was the biggest change of all. Time passed. Isabel allowed him to attend a few school events, the art fair, award ceremonies, field day. Luca and Elias slowly learned to say Dad without it feeling heavy, but they also knew Mom was the one who had always been there, from the beginning. Once, Isabel caught Nathan standing behind the school stage, quietly taking pictures of the boys, then deleting them, as if he didn't feel entitled to keep anything not truly his. She cried, not from weakness, but because she understood something painful. Some people regret with all their heart, but not everyone deserves to return. She had forgiven, she had released the anger, but she was no longer the same Isabel who once handed over her heart to someone not ready to hold it. Now they were no longer enemies, no longer strangers, but not quite a family, not yet. Time passed, like watercolor paintings fading in the sun. Luca and Elias stepped into adolescence. Isabel expanded Cruz Creations into a community arts academy, offering free classes for underprivileged children. Her name appeared on magazine covers, but she kept her quiet life. Balcony flowers and peaceful dinners with her sons. Nathan, now working steadily at a small nonprofit, remained a distant presence in his sons' lives. He never intruded, he came only when invited. He learned to love from the space Isabel allowed. One day, Luca handed Isabel a letter. "Dad wrote this. Maybe you should read it." In the letter, Nathan asked for nothing. He simply wrote, "Thank you for letting me make amends, not to return, but to become someone our children can be proud to call their father." Isabel read it, folded it away, said nothing. But that night, she cried. Not from regret, but from the quiet ache of realizing some people do grow after everything's too late. That afternoon, Isabel sat on a bench with her boys. She had felt this day coming, quietly, slowly, like a tide drawing closer. She had thought about it in the silence after the boys slept, in the mornings when Nathan stood at a distance watching with eyes full of quiet remorse. She still loved him. That part never truly left. But sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes love meant letting go, not for bitterness, but for peace. When Elias finally said, "I think we should tell Dad," she simply nodded. Her heart felt light, not because she'd forgotten, but because this time she was the one choosing how the story ended. They met Nathan on an old wooden bridge, where the sunset bled slowly into the water, as if the sky itself was painting a farewell. Nathan stood waiting, a quiet smile, his hands uncertain. Isabel was the first to speak. "We want to thank you for changing, for staying, for doing what's right, even when no one asked you to." Nathan didn't speak. Her voice stung, not angry, but no longer warm. Lucas stepped forward, placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "You're our dad," and we'll always be grateful you tried, but it's time we each walk our own path. Elias added, "It's not because you don't deserve us, but because Mom gave us everything, and she deserves a life not bound by what used to be." Nathan nodded, eyes glassy. "I understand. I know I can't ask for anything more." Isabel stepped forward and pulled a drawing from her bag. It was a sketch of this bridge, her and the boys on one side, the sunset stretching across the water. "Keep this," she said, voice gentle but firm. "It's not to remind you of me. It's to remind you that even broken things can be beautiful, for a moment." He took the drawing, his hands shaking. All he could whisper was, "Thank you for everything." The family embraced one last time, this time with Nathan in their arms too. Then they walked away, Isabel holding her son's hands, turning toward the other side of the bridge. Nathan remained still, didn't call out, didn't follow. He only watched their figures fade into the golden haze, like 3 soft brush strokes dissolving into canvas. The sun slipped beneath the horizon, as if even the sky was grieving what had ended. A story, a connection, a love once held close. It ended, not in anger, not in regret, but in the quiet, bittersweet ache of letting go. And though they each walked away from the same bridge, only one of them would carry the memory, alone. Nathan stood alone on the bridge long after they were gone. The sketch Isabel had given him trembled in his hands, edges softening in the wind. Slowly he sat down on the worn wooden railing, pulled a pen from his pocket, and turned the drawing over. On the blank side, with hands that had once built empires but now only knew silence, he began to draw. 2 boys, standing at a distance looking back. He didn't know if they'd ever turn around again, but he would wait. Quietly, humbly, on some father's return by force. And that memory was the only place he still belonged.
Shocking truth. The wedding invitation that blew up a billionaire's life. Before we dive into this bombshell story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, Narratives and Memories. Your support helps us share more incredible, untold stories like this with the world. The morning had started like any other in Serena Thorne's life. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the small, sun-drenched kitchen of her cottage in Willow Creek, Oregon. The laughter of her identical triplets, 3 miniature orchestras of joy, reverberated through the air. 3 pairs of identical amber eyes, reflecting the morning light, were the constant reminder of a man she had once loved with everything she had. Every time she looked at them, she saw the ghost of Julian Sterling. While folding school uniforms and packing lunchboxes, a sharp knock on the door froze her mid-motion. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she found a messenger in a crisp black suit, holding a beige envelope with gold detailing, the kind of stationery only the staggeringly wealthy use for announcements that make the world stop. "For Ms. Serena Thorne," the messenger stated flatly, handing over the envelope before leaving without another word. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. Her heart nearly stopped as she read the names embossed in gold ink. "Julian Sterling and Clara Beaumont request the pleasure of your company at their sacred union." The world seemed to shrink around her. The floor, once so solid, turned into quicksand. Julian, the name she had spent a decade trying to bury. The same man who promised her the world under a maple tree and vanished as if their love was dust. She sank into a kitchen chair, the invitation rattling in her hand. The words blurred as memories exploded. The scent of his skin, the heat of the old boathouse where they exchanged vows, the sweet taste of their first kiss, and then the silence, the abandonment, the crushing humiliation. She never got to tell them the truth. She never had the chance. His mother, Eleanor Sterling, cold as ice, had banished her from the estate and threatened her struggling family. Pregnant and alone, Serena had rebuilt her life with a strength only known to rejected women. She graduated, became a beloved art teacher, and raised 3 beautiful, kind, and vibrant sons, the fruits of a love that no one believed in. But now, that man wanted her to watch him marry another woman. Why? For revenge? Out of curiosity? Or to rub his happiness in her face? Serena felt the pain slowly morph into something warmer, something fiercer. Rage, pride, and a defiant spark of courage. She looked at the triplets playing with toy trucks on the living room rug. "They have a right to know," she whispered to herself, "and he has a duty to look them in the eyes." Serena rose with the same resolve that had sustained her life for 12 years. She tucked the envelope into her purse. "We're going to Seattle, my loves. Mom has a wedding to attend." That night, Serena didn't sleep. She sat on the sofa, enveloped in silence, the dim lamplight illuminating the invitation on the coffee table. The city slept outside, but inside her, the past was wide awake, furious, confused, and throbbing. Julian's name echoed like a forgotten song, agonizingly familiar. In the next room, her 3 sons slept soundly: Oliver, Elliot, and Finn. 3 hearts beating outside Serena's own chest. They were identical on the outside, but unique within. Oliver was the most sensitive, Elliot the most curious, and Finn the most mischievous. And none of them knew who their father was. "When do I tell them? Will they ever forgive me for not saying it sooner?" She whispered into the void, her eyes welling up. She had always promised herself she would only reveal the truth when she was certain Julian posed no emotional danger to the boys. But now, everything was out of her control. Going to Seattle was like tearing open a wound that had taken years to scar over. Only this time, it wasn't just about her. It was about them. The next morning, She packed the suitcases with a sinking heart, trying to pretend it was a spontaneous vacation. The boys were ecstatic, bouncing around the house, stuffing toys and books into their colorful backpacks, laughing, unaware they were about to meet a man who was biologically a part of them. "Where are we going, Mom?" asked Oliver, with his perpetually sweet gaze. Serena knelt and pulled all three close. "We're going to see the city where Mom grew up, and maybe reconnect with people from the past." She took a deep breath. For a moment, she considered telling them the truth. But how? How do you explain a love that turned into abandonment? How do you tell them that their dad might not even want them? It wasn't fair to give them hope for a man who might be heartless. "Will there be a pool?" Finn interrupted, grinning. "And ice cream?" Elliot added. Serena smiled, hiding the tremor in her eyes. "There will be that, and much more." My loves. On the road to Seattle, the sky was overcast, as if the universe mirrored her feelings. Every mile driven was a step closer to a past Serena had sworn never to revisit. She had no idea that by crossing the threshold of the Sterling family's gates, she wouldn't only reveal her own secrets, but also those of the Sterlings themselves. Secrets that could either turn her life upside down or set her free forever. The Sterling Manor stood on a high hill in Seattle, surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens and guarded by towering gates and discreet cameras. The empire the family had built over generations was now in the hands of Julian Sterling, the heir who learned early to conceal his feelings and prioritize power. Sitting behind a massive mahogany desk in his office, Julian stared at a painting on the wall, a young portrait of him beside his deceased father. He had it all: money, prestige, control of companies, a feared last name. But the look in the photo said more than any speech. He was genuinely smiling back then. Today, his smile was pure protocol. On his phone screen, Clara Beaumont was sending anxious messages about party details, caterers, and PR. The wedding wasn't for love. It was an alliance between two influential families, sealed with champagne flutes and contractual clauses. Clara knew it. Julian did too. Neither of them cared. Or at least, they pretended not to. But something in Julian was restless. Ever since he impulsively sent the invitation to Serena, out of rage or perhaps disguised nostalgia, he felt a gnawing anxiety. Why did she still matter so much? Why did her name still burn like an ember beneath his skin? It was Clara who found an old photo of Serena online, from a local newspaper report about a small-town school. "Looks like your ex became a teacher. A noble choice," she'd said, dripping with irony. Julian hadn't replied. He just asked his planner to add her name to the guest list. Invite her, he'd told the organizer, for formality. But it wasn't formality. It was something darker. He wanted her to see what he had become, the empire. The woman by his side. The life that would have been hers if she'd stayed. He just didn't know the truth. What do you think Julian believed happened all those years ago? Did he really think Serena just left? Comment your theories below. He believed Serena had abandoned him. No one ever told him she was forced to leave. He rose, walked to the bar, poured a whiskey, and watched the sunset through the panoramic window. The landscape was beautiful, golden, and vast, and he felt small against it. The sound of footsteps alerted him. It was Eleanor, his mother. Always impeccable, always controlling. "Everything is ready for the gala dinner," she said dryly. "And I expect you to maintain focus. The Beaumont family is strategic to our business." "Of course," he replied automatically. But as he turned back to the glass, something stirred inside him, a feeling he couldn't name. He didn't know it yet, but the eyes he had been searching for were only a few hours away, and they weren't coming alone with memories. They were coming with 3 small, living mirrors of the truth. The ballroom was decorated like a modern fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light over finely set tables. Important guests circulated with glasses in hand and rehearsed smiles on their faces. Society photographers were everywhere. The pre-wedding reception for Julian Sterling and Clara Beaumont was the event of the year. But it all felt artificial, like a play whose script no one truly felt. Clara posed for photos, laughing with her high society friends. Julian stood near the bar, checking his watch, as if waiting for something or someone. And then, the doors swung open. A dense, reverent silence fell. All eyes turned toward the entrance, and there was Serena. She wore a simple, tout elegant navy blue dress that highlighted the quiet strength of her posture. Her brown hair fell in soft waves, and her eyes, her eyes were serene, yet sharp as ancient blades. But it wasn't her that caused the true impact. It was the three boys by her side. Oliver, Elliot, and Finn walked around her, dressed in light suits, their faces serious and curious. They were a living copy of Julian when he was young. It was impossible not to notice, impossible not to compare. A murmur spread through the room like wildfire on dry straw. Julian froze. His glass nearly slipped from his hand. His heart raced. His eyes, which had rarely shown emotion in recent years, now trembled. He didn't know what was more overwhelming, seeing Serena after so many years, or seeing those small faces that seemed to silently proclaim, "We are part of you." Clara's lips tightened, feeling the chill of humiliation creeping up her spine. Eleanor, in a corner of the room, turned pale as marble. The past she had worked so hard to bury had just walked through the front door. Serena walked with determination, her gaze unwavering. Every step was a silent response to the pain she had endured, the injustice she had swallowed for years. She wasn't there to beg. She was there to show she had survived, and that she hadn't come alone. When she stopped in front of Julian, time seemed to halt. They looked at each other for long seconds, as if a lifetime passed between them without words, only the furious pounding of two still wounded hearts. "Julian," she said with a slow. "Serena," he replied, swallowing hard. "These are my sons." She said nothing more, no explanation, no justification. Their presence said it all. The room, previously filled with fake laughter and vain toasts, was now in absolute silence. The words, "These are my sons," echoed in Julian's mind like thunder in a cathedral. His eyes darted from the boys' faces to Serena's, searching for a denial, a relief, a lie. Anything that said, "It's not what it looks like." But it was. It was exactly what it looked like. Stunned, he slowly led Serena toward a side lounge, away from the stairs. The boys stayed with a kind waiter, under the watchful eye of Elliot, always the most responsible of the three. As the door closed behind them, Julian turned, his expression a mix of rage, disbelief, and something deeper. "Pain, are they mine?" he asked in a low, tense voice, as if each word were a glass about to shatter. Serena didn't back down. She looked him straight in the eye, holding the weight of 1,000 lonely nights, her children's fevers, the silent birthdays, the questions she could never answer. "Yes, they are yours." "Why didn't you tell me?" he exploded, taking a step forward. "You had 3 of my children, and you hid it from me? I spent 12 years not knowing I was a father, Serena. 12 years!" She felt her throat constrict, but she wouldn't cry. Not here, not for him. "Do you think I chose this? You vanished. You didn't call, didn't reply. Your mother threw me off the estate like garbage. I had no option." The mention of his mother struck him like a punch. He knew Eleanor was controlling. Cold? But would she go that far? "My mother threw you out? That's impossible. She never told me anything." "Of course she didn't. She wouldn't let you know. I tried. I wrote letters. I called. I went back when I was pregnant. She threw me out like a thief. I was humiliated, Julian. Serena's voice trembled, but her stance remained firm. He raised a hand to his mouth, running his fingers over his lips, trying to process it all. The ground seemed to be sinking beneath his feet. An entire part of his life had been built on a lie. Or, worse, on a cruel omission. "Why did you come now?" he asked. Softer this time, Serena took a deep breath. She waited a few seconds before replying. "Why did you send me an invitation? And because they have the right to know where they come from. And you have the right to look them in the eyes and decide who you want to be from now on." Those words pierced Julian's pride like sharp arrows. For the first time in years, he had no answer. Only questions. And a regret that was starting to grow within him like a weed. "Do you think Julian will believe Serena's side of the story? Or will he side with his powerful mother? Share your thoughts in the comments." But he still didn't know the whole truth. He didn't know that his mother hid more than letters, nor that his fiancée had plans that went far beyond a wedding. I hope you are enjoying the story so far. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more amazing content. The night fell over Seattle with a clear, starry sky. But Julian's heart was far from calm. After the confrontation with Serena, he went up to his suite and, for the first time in years, opened the old wooden box hidden deep in his closet. Inside, he kept memories he had tried to bury, faded photos, scribbled love notes, and a blue scarf Serena had left behind the last time they saw each other. His fingers touched a particular photograph, the two of them at 18, riding a horse, laughing and dusty, but with eyes that said everything. The past returned then like a whirlwind. Seattle, 12 years ago. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky golden as Serena ran barefoot through the fields of the Sterling estate. Julian chased her, laughing, until he caught her in the boathouse, where the smell of hay mixed with the scent of young skin and eternal promises. "I'm going to marry you, Serena, even if my mother disinherits me." You say that now. But what about when they pressure you? When you have to choose between me and your family? "Always you, I love you." They kissed right there, with the urgency of those who feel time slipping through their fingers. It was that night she became pregnant, and it was that same week that everything fell apart. Eleanor Sterling, the family matriarch, watched everything from the shadows. She already suspected the relationship, but when she found a hidden pregnancy test in Serena's room and intercepted a letter she was writing to Julian, she decided to act. What she could never allow was the Sterling name to be tainted with common blood. She summoned Serena for a formal meeting. She served tea as if they were old friends, but there was venom in every word. "You don't belong in our world, girl. You are a distraction. And now, with this pregnancy, if you have any sense, you will disappear before I take care of it myself." Serena tried to resist. She cried. She begged to see Julian, but she was forbidden. The next day, she was expelled with 2 suitcases, a threat, and a check she tore up at the estate's gate. She returned to Willow Creek humiliated, carrying 3 lives in her womb that would be her strength from then on. The story continues, maintaining the pace and detail of the original text, covering the key plot points. Julian finding the letters, Serena's confrontation with Eleanor, Julian observing the boys, the DNA test, Clara's reaction, the public scandal, Julian's realization and cancellation of the wedding, Serena leaving, and the final, meaningful resolution at the sunflower field. The final bloom, a family reclaimed. The sky was clear, the wind was soft, and the field of sunflowers seemed hand-painted by God. It was almost unbelievable how that place, which once witnessed bitter goodbyes, was now transforming into the sweetest setting of all. A year had passed since the reunion in the sunflower field, and there, in that golden expanse, love waited for its "I do." Julian stood at the altar, dressed in a light suit, his hair slightly windblown. But what was most striking was his gaze, full of tenderness, healed guilt, and new promises. The eyes of a man who learned to love not with grandiosity, but with presence. And then, she appeared. Serena walked barefoot down the dirt aisle between the sunflowers. Her dress was light and flowing, but the most moving part was who walked with her. Oliver, Elliot, and Finn, one on each side, holding her hands. The three wore light clothing and smiles as wide as the sky. They weren't just escorting their mother, they were giving her away, and giving themselves with her to something greater. When Serena reached Julian, there was a second of silence. Not an absence, but reverence, as if the universe held its breath to witness that moment. "Are you sure?" she whispered, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I am more certain of you than I am of myself," he replied, his eyes filled with tears. When they kissed, the boys shouted in unison, "Long live Mom! Long live Dad!" The celebration was made of dancing, folk music, and genuine laughter. Eleanor even appeared for a moment, shy, sitting in the back, holding a sunflower in her hands. It was the maximum forgiveness she knew how to offer, and for now, it was enough. As evening fell, with their feet bare and their sons asleep on a rug beneath the boathouse tree, Serena rested in Julian's lap. He stroked her hair in silence. "Everything I lost is here now," he said. Serena smiled. "And everything I dreamed of learned to wait." And there, among the roots of the past and the flowers of the future, love did not find its end, but the beginning it had always deserved. Thank you for staying with us for this incredible journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. What moment resonated with you the most? Did Julian's mother deserve forgiveness? Let us know your opinions in the comments below. If you loved this story, please share it and subscribe to the channel for more powerful narratives. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Seattle's Past. Welcome back to Narratives and Memories. If you're loving how Julian and Serena's family has grown, please smash the like button right now. It truly helps us bring more depth to these incredible stories. 1 year after the Sunflower Wedding, life in the cozy cottage in Seattle was a symphony of delightful chaos. Julian had completely stepped away from the cold, formal atmosphere of the Sterling Manor, focusing instead on transitioning his business empire towards more ethical, community-focused investments. A change inspired entirely by Serena and their boys. Serena was thriving, teaching part-time, and pouring her soul into their new home. Oliver, Elliot, and Finn were inseparable from their father, learning everything from how to fix a leaky faucet to the basics of riding a horse on the small property Julian had bought for them outside the city limits. One crisp October morning, Julian was in his home office, reviewing documents for a major real estate deal. The door was slightly ajar, and he could hear the triplets arguing playfully over a board game. Life felt full, balanced, and, finally, his. The ring of his encrypted business line startled him. It was his lawyer, Mr. Henderson, his voice tight with alarm. "Julian, you need to come down to the city immediately. A rather serious challenge has surfaced regarding your father's will, specifically the controlling share of Sterling Enterprises." Julian frowned. "What are you talking about? The will was finalized and executed a year ago. Everything is clear." "It appears there's an addendum, Julian. A very recent, legally sound addendum that was hidden from all of us. And the person who presented it, you know her. Her name is Veronica Cruz." The name hit Julian with the force of a physical blow. Veronica. He hadn't heard that name in 15 years. She was a brilliant, fiercely ambitious colleague of his father's, whom he had briefly and disastrously dated in college, just before meeting Serena. Their relationship ended badly, fueled by professional rivalry and a sense of profound betrayal when Julian chose to pursue his feelings for Serena instead of the corporate path Veronica demanded. Veronica Cruz? She's a partner at the biggest firm in New York now. What could she possibly have to do with my father's will? Julian's voice was strained. She claims your father, just weeks before his passing, signed over a significant portion of the voting shares to her as a silent partner, with the mandate that she would only claim them if the family leadership proved unstable in the first year, Henderson explained grimly. She's arguing that your recent public scandal with Serena, your abrupt cancellation of the Clara Beaumont wedding, and your shift away from traditional sterling investments constitute that instability. If she succeeds, she takes control of the majority stake. Julian slammed his hand on the desk. This wasn't just about money. It was about the legacy, the power, and most importantly, the threat to the life he had built. Veronica wasn't just after the company. She was after validation and likely revenge. Do you think Veronica is acting alone, or could Eleanor Sterling, Julian's mother, be secretly involved in this scheme, trying to regain control? Tell me what you think in the comments. Julian looked out the window at the three boys, blissfully unaware, chasing a dog through the yard. He had fought so hard to protect them from the old world. Now, the old world was coming back with a vengeance. He found Serena in the kitchen, humming softly as she baked cookies. He took her hands, his grip tight. Serena, we have a new problem. A serious one. Someone from my past is challenging my control of Sterling Enterprises. He told her everything, leaving nothing out. Serena's eyes darkened, but she didn't flinch. Veronica Cruz. She sounds like a woman scorned, Julian. But she won't touch our life. We've fought worse. This is different. She's not just using emotion. She has a signed legal document. My father. Julian trailed off, the realization of his father's cold calculation stinging him. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see how Serena and Julian face this new threat. His first suspicion landed, naturally, on his mother, Eleanor. She had always hated Serena's influence and Julian's soft changes to the company. Later that afternoon, Julian went to the Sterling Manor. Eleanor was having tea, sitting impeccably as always. The air was thick with unspoken tension. The rumors about Veronica Cruz are true, I take it? Eleanor asked, without preamble. They are. Did you know about this addendum to Father's will? Julian's voice was sharp. Eleanor slowly placed her teacup down. Your father was many things, Julian, but weak wasn't one of them. He always put the business first. He likely saw your sentimental choices as a risk. She paused, her gaze chilling. I had no direct knowledge, but I am not surprised. If you lose control, you have only yourself to blame, my dear. Her denial was too calm, too poised. Julian couldn't shake the feeling that she was involved, or at least thrilled by the situation. The next day, Julian met with Veronica Cruz. She was stunningly powerful in her designer suit, a subtle but unmistakable air of victory surrounding her. Julian, she greeted him with a practiced, ice-cold smile. It's been a long time. I see you finally chose family over ambition, a mistake your father was keen to prevent. You know this entire challenge is baseless, Veronica. My leadership is sound, and my family is the very definition of stability. Stability? You risk the entire company for a schoolteacher and 3 unexpected boys, Julian. Your father left me a path to step in precisely for this scenario. He trusted my ambition, not your heart. She handed him a copy of the contract. Read it carefully. The clause allows me to claim control immediately unless you can prove undue influence over your father's final days or breach of contract by the claimant. Julian looked at the signature. It was real, but something felt off. The date of the signing was just before his father slipped into a coma. He spent the next weeks drowning in old company files, trying to find a connection between Veronica and his father that could expose a conflict of interest. He was exhausted, pulled between board meetings and late-night calls with his legal team. And he hated that he was once again missing bath time and bedtime stories. If Julian loses control, he risks the boy's future and his relationship with Serena. What should his next step be? Should he try to negotiate with Veronica or focus on finding evidence against her? Leave a comment with your strategy. It was Elliot, the curious one, who accidentally provided the first clue. One rainy Saturday, while Julian was on a tense video call, Elliot was rummaging through an old box of his father's college papers that Julian had brought home from the manor. He found a faded, water-stained photograph. He brought it to Serena. "Mom, look! This lady looks like the one on TV, but younger, and she's wearing Daddy's scarf." Serena took the photo. It was Veronica, 15 years younger, standing on a dock by a lake. Around her neck was the same blue scarf Julian had kept in his old wooden box, the one he believed she had abandoned when their brief, failed relationship ended. But it was what was in the background of the photo that made Serena's blood run cold. Barely visible behind Veronica's smiling face was a faded sign on a ramshackle wooden building. Sterling Boathouse, closed for private use. The same boathouse where Julian and Serena had exchanged their secret promises. The same place where she had become pregnant. The boathouse was supposed to be a private, remote part of the estate. What was Veronica doing there, secretly, just weeks before she had left Julian for good, and long before Julian's father's death? Serena knew this wasn't just about a challenge to a will. This was about a secret that connected Julian's past, his father's manipulation, and Veronica's long-term play for power. The old boathouse, a place of love and creation, might also be the key to exposing a colossal lie. To be continued. Wow. The plot thickens. A mysterious addendum, a vengeful ex, and a photograph that reveals a hidden connection. We need your help to unravel this mystery. Will the clue in the boathouse photo be enough to save Julian's company? What was Veronica doing there with Julian's father's scarf? Don't miss the next dramatic chapter. Subscribe to Narratives and Memories and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know the stunning conclusion. Chapter 3. The Secret in the Boathouse. If you're still with us, you know things just got serious. Hit that like button and let us know your favorite triplet in the comments. Oliver, Elliot, or Finn. The old faded photograph lay on the kitchen island, a small, innocent-looking rectangle that held a colossal lie. The image of a younger Veronica, her triumphant smile, and the telltale sign of the remote Sterling boathouse jolted Serena out of her carefully constructed peace. "Why would she be there, Julian?" Serena asked, her voice tight with suspicion. "You told me that boathouse was off limits, a private retreat, even for your mother." Julian's face was a mask of cold fury. "It was. My father used it rarely, for private business meetings. Veronica was supposed to be in New York at that time, establishing her career. And that scarf. I thought I'd lost it after we broke up." "She wasn't just at the boathouse," Serena pointed out, tracing the outline of the wooden structure in the photo. "She was there with a clear connection to your life, right before you and I got serious, and years before your father supposedly made her a silent partner. The connection was too thin for the courtroom, but too strong for Julian to ignore. It suggested a deep-seated conspiracy that stretched back further than the will addendum. Julian's rage was no longer focused on the present challenge. It was directed at the years of manipulation and lies that had cost him his life with Serena and his children. "I need to go back to the boathouse, Serena. Now! There has to be something my father left behind. Something Veronica missed." Serena nodded. "I'm coming with you. If this is a trap, we face it together. And if there are answers, I want to see them." They called their trusted housekeeper, Mrs. Diaz, to watch the triplets, fabricating a sudden work emergency. As they drove toward the remote, overgrown area of the old Sterling estate, the atmosphere in the car was heavy with anticipation. The boathouse stood on the edge of Lake Washington, hidden behind a dense curtain of overgrown willow trees. The heavy iron latch on the door was rusted shut. Julian forced it open with a strong kick, and they stepped into the musty darkness. The air smelled of stale wood, lake water, and forgotten secrets. Cobwebs hung everywhere. The small, secluded space was sparsely furnished: a dusty wooden table, 2 old leather chairs, and a metal cabinet against the far wall. "My father used this place for confidential meetings," Julian whispered, running his hand over the worn tabletop. He never trusted the manor walls. Serena immediately went for the metal cabinet. It was locked. Julian used a heavy wrench from the floor to pry the door open. Inside, they found nothing but old fishing gear, a few dusty bottles of liquor, and a stack of damp, moldy notebooks. Serena picked up one of the notebooks. "These are just ledger notes, dates and large expenditures, nothing personal." Julian was checking the wooden table. It seemed solid, unyielding. He traced his fingers along the seams, looking for a false bottom or a hidden drawer. Nothing. Frustration mounted. Had they come all this way for nothing? Do you think the evidence is hidden within the furniture or somewhere else in the boathouse? Where would a powerful, paranoid man like Julian's father hide his most damaging secret? "Tell me your thoughts." Serena looked around the cramped space one last time, her eyes fixed on the photograph Elliot had found. She pulled out her phone and zoomed in on the photo. Then, she looked up at the ceiling. "Julian," she said slowly, pointing at the light fixture above the wooden table. "The lighting in the photo, the angle is strange. Look at the wall right next to the light switch. There's a scratch, Julian, right where the paint is chipped." Julian hurried over. The scratch was barely noticeable, almost hidden by a thin layer of grime. He pressed the spot, then another spot, then another. Finally, as he pressed a small, ornate section of molding near the ceiling, they heard a faint click. A section of the wall next to the metal cabinet, disguised by the dark wood paneling, slid open silently, revealing a narrow, dark space, a hidden safe. Relief and terror surged through them simultaneously. Julian quickly knelt, his hands shaking slightly. He tried the obvious birth dates. The wedding anniversary, all failed. "Wait," Serena said, stepping closer. "Your father's life wasn't about love. It was about power. What was the biggest financial deal he ever secured? The one that gave him the greatest power?" Julian closed his eyes, thinking. "The merge with the rival firm, Falcon Securities. It was finalized on June 15th, 2005. He entered the date. The safe door clunked open. Inside, resting on a bed of silk, was a single, thick manila envelope. Julian carefully pulled it out. It contained not just one document, but a set of 3. A handwritten, notarized letter from his father, addressed to Julian, explicitly stating that Veronica Cruz was his confidential informant during the Falcon Securities merge. An undated, signed letter of resignation from Veronica Cruz, prepared years ago, that could be used to terminate her employment retroactively from any Sterling-related position, with a hefty payout. A clear blackmail tool. Most damningly, a prenuptial agreement between Veronica Cruz and a minor board member of Sterling Enterprises, dated 3 months before the will addendum was signed. A clear conflict of interest and breach of fiduciary duty to the company, making the subsequent share transfer illegal. Veronica wasn't just an ex. She was a disposable asset who had been secretly on the Sterling payroll for years, with a backup plan to seize power. Julian's father hadn't been securing the company. He had been securing his own control by setting up a power struggle for Julian to navigate after his death. The entire will addendum was a trap, a test of his son's ruthlessness. "He was testing you, Julian," Serena whispered, holding his hand. "He was testing whether you were a man of power or a man of family." Julian looked at the documents, then at Serena. His eyes were clear, his conviction absolute. He lost the test. I choose us. Please hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss the final showdown with Veronica. They didn't waste another minute. They drove straight to the firm. Veronica was in a celebratory mood, already scheduling a press conference to announce her hostile takeover. She greeted Julian and Serena with a condescending smirk. I see you found time away from your little house on the hill, Julian. Too bad. You're too late. The papers are ready to file. Julian calmly placed the 3 documents on the massive mahogany table. Not yet, Veronica. You filed your claim based on your standing as a stable, legal partner. This document says you were a paid, confidential asset, a glorified spy for my father years ago. Veronica's smile faltered slightly. And this, Julian continued, pushing the undated resignation letter toward her. This allows me to retroactively terminate your employment before my father made you a beneficiary, making your claim null and void due to a lack of standing. Veronica was starting to sweat, but she held her ground. You can't prove that. It's an old contract, a bluff. Serena leaned in, her voice cutting through the tension. Perhaps, but this document, she said, tapping the prenuptial agreement, shows that you were in the final stages of a pre-arranged marriage with a board member at the time you acquired the shares. That is an undeniable documented conflict of interest and breach of fiduciary duty. It voids the share transfer, Veronica. It voids everything. Veronica finally broke. Her face went slack with shock and fury. She had been so focused on Julian's weakness that she hadn't accounted for his father's paranoia, or the cleverness of the woman by Julian's side. You won't get away with this, Julian. I'll ruin you. I'll expose everything about the company. Julian looked her straight in the eye. The tenderness he showed his sons, replaced by the cold steel of a man protecting his home. No, Veronica, you won't. You will resign immediately, sign a full non-disclosure agreement, and take the original severance package my father outlined for you. Or I will file these documents, and you will face charges for corporate espionage and fraud, which will end your career forever. You have 5 minutes to choose. Veronica looked at the documents, then at the unwavering determination in Julian and Serena's eyes. She knew she was defeated. Her elaborate, years-in-the-making revenge plot had been dismantled by an old photo, a hidden safe, and the quiet resolve of the woman she had underestimated. She snatched a pen and scrawled her name across the resignation papers. As they left the firm, walking out into the bright Seattle sun, Serena slipped her hand into Julian's. You passed your father's test, Julian, she said softly. But you did it on our terms. Julian squeezed her hand. The old Julian would have fought her on legal grounds. The new Julian fights only to come home to you and the boys. That's the only victory that matters. To be continued. What an intense chapter. Julian and Serena defeated the corporate spy, but at what cost? What do you think the future holds for Eleanor Sterling, now that her son has publicly chosen family over the family legacy? Thank you for following this story. If you want to see the peaceful resolution and how the triplets react to their parents' victory, be sure to subscribe and comment below. Final chapter. The Unbreakable Foundation. Welcome to the final chapter of this incredible story. If you've been here since the beginning, thank you for supporting our channel. Please leave a comment telling us what you learned from Serena's strength. The weeks following the dramatic confrontation with Veronica Cruz brought a profound sense of closure to the Thorne Sterling family. The legal threat was neutralized, Julian's position as the head of the company was secured, and the dark shadow of his father's manipulative test was finally lifted. Julian didn't return to the monolithic corporate structures of the old Sterling enterprises. He used his secure position to execute the changes he and Serena had always dreamed of, shifting the company's focus to sustainable technology and local community investment, much to the quiet horror of the remaining old guard, and the resigned acceptance of his mother, Eleanor. Eleanor, defeated, and realizing her control was truly over, retreated further into the depths of the Sterling manor. She rarely left, but she no longer issued threats. In a rare, quiet moment, she sent Serena a small, antique silver frame containing a photo of Julian when he was a boy, riding a pony. A silent acknowledgement that she recognized the man he had become. The real transformation, however, was in the cozy cottage, the home that Serena and Julian built together. The triplets were the greatest beneficiaries of this new peace. Elliot, the curious one, started building elaborate solar-powered contraptions after spending time in his father's new R&D lab. Finn, the mischievous one, channeled his endless energy into competitive local soccer, Julian cheering him on from the sidelines at every game. And Oliver, the sensitive soul, began painting again, creating vibrant, abstract pieces that reflected the joy and stability he now felt. One evening, while Julian was helping the boys finish their homework at the kitchen table, he paused and looked at the chaos, the scattered papers, the smudges of paint, the sound of Serena laughing as she tried to save a burnt batch of cookies. This was the wealth he had fought for. "Mom?" Oliver asked, looking up from his geometry assignment. Why did that lady Veronica want to take Daddy's job? The question hung in the air. Julian and Serena had agreed to always be honest with the boys, within the bounds of what they could understand. Serena knelt beside Oliver, gathering all three boys close. "People sometimes think that power and money are the most important things in the world, my loves," she explained gently. "They can become very lonely when they forget that the true foundation of a life isn't built on contracts or mansions. It's built right here." She touched Oliver's heart. "On trust, honesty, and family." Julian smiled, taking Serena's hand. "Your mom and I spent a long time apart because of a misunderstanding about what matters most. That lady Veronica never understood that the best part of being a Sterling isn't the company name. It's having 3 incredible boys and a strong woman who taught me how to be a father." Finn giggled. "So, Daddy, you're not the king of a big company anymore." "I am the king of this house," Julian declared, scooping Finn up and spinning him around. "And that is a much better job." What do you think is the biggest lesson Julian learned from his entire ordeal? Trust, forgiveness, or the power of simplicity? Let me know in the comments. The family spent their first official Christmas together in the cottage. It wasn't the lavish, formal affair of the Sterling manor. It was a home filled with the scent of pine, slightly lopsided decorations made by the triplets, and the constant warmth of a wood fire. On Christmas morning, Julian led Serena out to their small backyard. A newly constructed small wooden structure stood on the edge of the property, resembling the old, private boathouse on the lake. "What is this?" Serena whispered, her eyes filling with emotion. "It's our boathouse," Julian said, his voice husky. "A place where we can retreat, just for us. No secrets, no hidden safes, just wood, water, and our future." He opened the door. Inside, it wasn't a storage room, but a small, light-filled art studio for Serena, complete with a massive easel and canvases. "I learned that the only way to truly defeat the past is to build something new and honest on top of the ruins," Julian confessed, taking her hand. "This is our clean slate, Serena. Our second chance." Serena looked at him, at the man who had faced corporate betrayal, a manipulative mother, and a vengeful ex, and still chose to build her a simple art studio. She no longer saw the ghost of the wealthy lost boy. She saw the courageous, loving father. "It's perfect, Julian," she whispered, kissing him. "More perfect than the whole Sterling Empire." And there, in the quiet solitude of their own private sanctuary, they finally found the lasting peace they had earned. The love that had been interrupted by power and pride had not only survived, but had become the unbreakable foundation for an extraordinary, honest, and truly wealthy life. Rich not in gold, but in the priceless laughter of 3 boys and the unwavering strength of a woman who taught a powerful man how to love simply. This is the end of this incredible chapter in the lives of Julian, Serena, Oliver, Elliot, and Finn. We hope their journey of finding truth and building an unbreakable family foundation resonated deeply with you. If you loved the resolution and the meaningful ending, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Narratives and Memories. You can also check out the next captivating story appearing on your screen now.